In today's video, I'm going to share with you 3 farmhouse Christmas thrift trash to treasure projects. So here we go. For my first project, I wanted to try to recreate one of these antique milk bottles that I saw on the Michaels website. Michaels had them 3 bottles for $29.99, but I knew I could make the look for less. I started with this carafe. I've had it in my thrifted stash for a while, always intending to make something with it, but never getting around to it. And so I gave that 2 coats of white chalk paint. I used my brush. I usually use a brush over a foam brush. It's just a preference thing. Here's what it looked like after 2 coats. And then I used my sandpaper just to take a little bit of the paint off of some of the parts, just to give it a little bit of a distressing and to just smooth out any places on the paint that didn't look the way I wanted them to. Then I used a hair tie to try to make a circle. That didn't work very well, so I actually wound up just kind of eyeballing it, but this was sort of a guideline. I'm sure there's a better way to make a circle on a bottle, but I don't know what it is. Then I used my Arteza paint pens and I wrote the word joy on my bottle, and obviously you could write any word that you want, but I liked the word joy. I've been trying to infuse joy into our home during these very challenging times. And then I outlined what would be the wreath with my paint pen as well. And then I freehanded some leaves onto the wreath. I was just trying to get a look similar to that on the inspiration piece. And then I took this pick and I knew it was too big to use the whole thing on the bottle. So I just cut some pieces off of it to make it into a smaller pick. And I used my wire cutters to do that. That is a very good tool to have. You need a pair of wire cutters if you're going to do crafts. And then I took a piece of twine and I tied it around the neck of the carafe. I just kind of tied a knot. And then I took my pick and I tied the twine around that as well. And then I did come back a little later with the hot glue just to make sure that everything was going to stay in place. Then I didn't want the end to just be sticking up, so I actually curled it around into kind of like a curly Q like you would see kind of on like a grapevine. And I used my little plier to really bend it well into the shape that I wanted it to be. And then I made a little bow out of twine and I attached that with hot glue. And here's what it looked like. And the only thing left to do was to add the little red berries to the wreath. My Arteza paint pens did not come with a red one because I got the Brights package. And so I used the end of a paintbrush and some red paint and just dotted it on that way. And here's the finished product. I really love it. I think it looks very similar to the inspiration piece at a lot lower cost, and I'm super happy to have it for my Christmas farmhouse decor. And because I was using a thrifted find, I estimate the cost of this project to be about $2. For Thrift Trash to Treasure number 2, I wanted to use this little frame with chicken wire that I found, I think, at a yard sale, although it could have been the Goodwill bins. I meant to make this last year and just never did. So I finally wound up painting it white because, the burgundy doesn't really go with what I do in my house. And then I wanted to make kind of like a corner spray for it. So I started with these Dollar Tree greenery ties. They're like these twisty ties covered in evergreen. Super useful. If you ever see them, you should definitely pick them up. And I took about 3 of them and made them into a 90-degree angle. And then I just took little pieces of greenery that I had left over from the first project or from other projects, and I just kind of like wired them in using the little Dollar Tree evergreen ties. And then I had this one here. I always go to Joann's Fabrics like right around this time of year, unfortunately. And then maybe sometimes after Christmas, and I pick up like random Christmas greenery to put in my stash, because sometimes you can like put it all together and, you know, have nice looking Christmas greenery for really cheap. And then these berries, I think I also got at Joann's Fabrics last year on like a super duper sale. And so I just used a sprig of those. And again, never feel forced to use like the picks that they put together. You can always like take pieces off. That's what I do. And then I sanded down the frame just to, you know, give it a little bit of a distressed look, because that's what I like in my house. So I just used some of my sandpaper to let some of the burgundy paint show through. And it doesn't really look burgundy, it just looks darker. And then I took my hot glue and I glued my little right angle pick that I had created to the corner, and just like pressed it down and held it there for a little bit to make sure that it stuck really well. And then I took this little Dollar Tree cardinal and I added that to the greenery. And then I really wanted to hang this on my new china cabinets in my dining room. So I wanted to add a ribbon. You wouldn't have to do that. You could also do like a sawtooth hanger, but I knew I wasn't hanging it on the wall on a nail. So I wanted to use a ribbon so that I could hook it over a knob. So I just had this piece of ribbon in my stash. I think this is also from Joann's Fabrics, but I think I got it last year. I just, cut even lengths. And then I took this little metal piece that I got from the Dollar Tree as well. It came in a pack of 3 with, I think one says believe, one says joy, and then one says peace. And I just put a big dollop of hot glue in the middle on that letter A. And so that's the first like touch point that I got it to stick at. And then I kind of added some hot glue where it wouldn't be super obvious. And then you'll see I actually turned it over and put more glue on the back, and you'll see that in a minute. Because I really didn't want to have to like wire this on. I didn't want like wire to show. And the hot glue holds pretty well. I mean, obviously I'm not using it outside, so I think you need more if you're going to use it outside, but hanging in my dining room, it should be just fine. And here's what it looks like hanging over the knob of my cabinet in my dining room. I'm super pleased with how it turned out. And I replaced another sign that I had originally had here that was a fall sign that I had made. So I'm happy to have one for Christmas time. And I estimate the cost of this project to be about $5. And for the third thrift trash to treasure project, I'm starting with this can that it looks like someone else DIY'd. So it's already been made to look like a rusty can. They did a very nice job on it. All I had to do was take off this brown paper label. I just worked at getting the paper off, and I did wind up using a little sandpaper to get it off. I never did get it fully off, and I probably could use like crud cutter or something, but I didn't want to risk messing up the finish of the can. And I knew it was going to be facing the back anyway, so I wasn't too worried about it. Then I came in with this ribbon. I think this is from Walmart, but I could be wrong about that. And I just wrapped a piece of this pretty ribbon. It's like, it almost looks like a natural burlap kind of, but then it has like this, I don't even know what to call it, but this red trim around the edges. I just think it's so cute and vintagey looking. And then I put a piece of Dollar Tree foam in the center. And then I just started clipping off pieces of these picks that I bought this year. You probably saw them in one of my Dollar Tree hauls. They come with cotton and pine cones. But in my opinion, the best way to work with Dollar Tree picks is to not use them the way that they assemble them. Like you have to cut the little pieces off or it just looks a lot cheaper. Like you can just make it look a lot more high end if you use your wire clippers and just arrange the pieces separately. I'm also here inserting some of these little foam picks that I got at Hobby Lobby, and you can see like I bought a big branch of them and then I just cut it up and put the pieces in separately, and that just gives a much nicer, more of an arranged look. Sorry if you hear my dogs barking in the background. And I just started with the tallest pieces in the center, and then I tried to make them shorter as I went around the edges. And that's just kind of how I was doing it, because this is a round floral arrangement, so it's a good way to approach it. And once I had arranged all the pieces of the Dollar Tree picks, then I came in with another pack of these branches that I told you about, and I just folded them in half and kind of stuck them into the arrangement. And this just kind of beefed up the greenery, kind of gave it a more full look. Because, you know, Dollar Tree picks can be a little bit skimpy sometimes. So this is just a nice way to fill in the arrangement inexpensively. And once I had all the greenery arranged, I came in with another piece of the ribbon and I just tied a simple shoelace bow, I like to call it. And then I snipped off the ends to make them look nice, and I glued that to the front. And then I decided I wanted to add one final touch. I really wanted to add this little word joy. This was in the same pack with the word peace that I used on the first project. And instead of just like sticking it on, you know, a dowel or something, I decided to put it on this little piece of greenery that I have that has jingle bells on it. So I just put a dab of hot glue and attached it to the pick. And then I inserted the pick into the styrofoam. And here's what this project looks like. I love how it turned out. I think it looks like something you could spend a lot of money on from a florist. And I added some little fairy lights from the Dollar Tree. They're whimsical, and I just like the way that they look. I estimate the cost of this thrift trash to treasure to be about $7. And that's all that I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed these 3 farmhouse Christmas thrift trash to treasures. I hope this inspires you to look at what you have or see what you can find at a thrift store and maybe make it over and save yourself some money. Make your home beautiful. Until my next video, thanks for watching.